Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin wa ashabihi al-muntajibin wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsan ila qiyam yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I thought I would talk about something that I myself have gone through for a long patch of my own life when I've not been in a state of inner equilibrium. And that is when little events trigger off a negative spiral within the mind and we can't let go. And that affects everything else that we do. And it takes a very long time before those impressions leave the mind and the soul. So let us give an example. If somebody says something or does something or irritates us or annoys us, and if we feel that this is really not fair on us, then we don't have the ability to just let go, put it to rest, and move on. What we do is we internalize that particular event. After internalizing it, we then give it greater life and existence by fueling it, by thinking over it, regurgitating it, and all sorts of complexities are introduced within the mind. Then we think on that event and make it far, far bigger than what it is, to the extent inner chatter comes in, analyzing, reanalyzing, finding ways, having inner conversations. Now, I don't know if rest of you encounter this or is it just my mad mind. But what that does is it wastes our time, consumes us, and actually it's cancerous. It begins to damage us, and we can see it is damaging us. And it leads on to bitter feelings that we feel within our hearts. And actually, those bitter feelings have a life. They emit from our souls, and it affects the environment around us and also impacts the person concerned. The other thing I noticed within my own experiences was that on many occasions it was easy to let go, but through force of habit, one would not want to let it go. I would want to analyze it, build on it, go deep into it. And then with the passage of time, what happens is that it becomes an embedded habit and a disposition of the soul. So as life goes on, it is no longer a choice of letting it go. You have no choice. You're enwrapped in this web of being offended and thinking and criticizing, inner chatter, and then it affects our responses to that person and to the rest of our interactions, and it affects the rest of the interactions with other people as well. Now, this I found was extremely damaging. Before you know it, you forget the meaning of freedom and being free. And that becomes normality, and that becomes life. And that is a very alien situation. It is like trapping somebody in a room filled with fumes. They are constantly breathing in and breathing out fumes and getting suffocated. It is no different to that. And it slowly and gradually takes life away and the quality of life. And we are in that constant suffocated state. Our thinking is no longer right. The inner perceptors of the divine communication all become dumbed down, tarnished, and they shut down. How do we find a way out of it? Now, when we reach that level, it becomes acute. It becomes very, very difficult. Let me just give an example of a real life situation. If somebody is working for us and they're behaving unreasonably, then we get offended at that. And we know this is so unfair. This is not right in any way whatsoever. Now, as opposed to parking that feeling and saying, okay, I will talk with the person concerned and talk calmly with them, clarify my position, listen to their take on the situation and their justification. As opposed to doing that, we feel offended. How dare they say this? But I know now they are thinking in this way, and this is what they are going to say. All that continues in our heads. Or if a loved one does something to offend us, then we feel that offense far more than what we are supposed to feel, as opposed to discussing it, parking the feeling, and clearing the air and saying, look, maybe you are wrong here, rethink, or I am offended here. We don't give that opportunity. We build on the negative. And even if that person is wrong and they're adamant, we are supposed to let it go, leave it, and continue with life and take a decision on that situation. So these are real life examples. Now, when that becomes our disposition, it becomes very difficult to be otherwise. Now, Rawan just taught us how to become mindful. But during the course of that meditation, we will find that that mindfulness doesn't really work because that thing that is ingrained within us is so deeply ingrained that that mindful session becomes arduous. It becomes very, very difficult to conduct since we are not accustomed to being free from within ourselves. So the therapy that is applied is very superficial at that level, unfortunately. Same goes with our salah. Our salah doesn't do much for us. And indeed, we ask ourselves, of what point is this salah? What worth does it have? It's not that salah doesn't have any worth or mindfulness doesn't have any worth. What it is that we are not available to mindfulness sessions, when we are not available to the therapeutic effects of the salah itself. We are in a very deeply entrenched state in which we are enslaved. We can't get out. What I found in my life, something that helped was the constant remembrance of Allah. When that state comes upon the soul, to remember Allah constantly. Now, it becomes very arduous. It becomes very, very difficult because you don't want to remember God. It's an alien situation in there. There is repulsion to this remembrance of God or to prayers, so on and so forth. But, as we have said in previous sessions, it's to be seen as a keep fit regime. You might not like the jog that you're supposed to perform in the evening. You might become breathless, perspire, your body might ache, but if you can just persevere and do it for a few days or a few weeks or a few months, without realizing, your health will be restored. And then after that, you will see the difference. This is the trouble we need to take. At least I found that in my own experiences. Prolonged patches of remembrance of God take us away from falling prey to that inner disposition. We will stop feeling those negative feelings and the mind will be set free to not to think about it, because the mind then constantly fuels the feeling and the feeling fuels the mind. So we are thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. That cycle is slowly and gradually severed. After that, when we are faced with challenging situations, we take them as challenges and try and resolve them, as opposed to internalizing them to the extent at which we were internalizing them and getting caught up internally. one of the things that the masters suggest that I have found extremely beneficial is that when we stand for prayers, as difficult as it may be, to take time during our prayers. Now, it might seem a very wasteful activity initially, but if we can 5 times a day stand peacefully, force ourselves, and do our prayers slowly, going to ruku, and as opposed to just saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim wa bihamdi, to continuously say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim wa bihamdi, Subhanallah, 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 to lengthen the ruku and to lengthen the sajda. Every time it goes towards bestowing calmness upon ourselves, taking us away from the rut and the turmoil of what is going on within us. It relieves us of ourselves. And after that, when we sit in a session of mindfulness, we will see actually it is very, very impactful. It is very therapeutic. It gives us back our life and our freedom. Whenever we pray, we will find that if nothing else, even if the divine radiance does not shine upon our hearts in the way that we anticipate and expect, of course, majority of these expectations are wrong, are not accurate, but at least we will find that, this prayer gives me peace. It's taken me away from my routine. It has freed me from my thinking and my preoccupations. At that point, when we do dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will find it a source of relief. And I think that's why the Quran is so heavily insistent upon remembering God very, very frequently and excessively. There has to be an existential reason for why the Quran is insistent on excessive remembrance of God. It knows it's arduous, it's alien to our human condition, yet it's prescribing it because that is the way that will free us internally. I will stop there and I'm open for your contributions. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, Samina, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. Salam, Shaykh. How are you?
I'm good. I'm well.
Okay. I had one question. You know, when we are praying, our mind does, like you said, when you're, praying, you're just focusing and removing yourself from stress and everything. But sometimes your mind is so much chatter going on in the brain while one is praying, and you're just praying. You think sometimes, are you just praying for the sake of praying, and then your mind is all over the place? How does one, try to remove those thoughts and just focus on the Lord and just...
So what I used to do in my earlier days was that I was very, very mindful of the motions of my limbs.
Correct.
And the way I was breathing, just like Rawan was just teaching us. And very mindful of the words that I was uttering, to utter them very, very accurately. Bismillah, ar-Rahman, ar-Rahim.
Right.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So when you actually become mindful of your actions, of your emotions, and you bring stillness within your body, and you do not make motions that are extraneous to the motions required during prayers, then that slowly, gradually starts bringing in calmness. What it will do is, instead of focusing on our inner thoughts, we are focusing on other things. So as we focus on other things, the inner thoughts do not get fuel to sustain on for that moment.
Right.
So the 5-10 minutes for which we are praying, the inner thoughts and that cycle is starved. When you can do that 5 times a day, or at least once a day diligently, then that will then arrest those thoughts and start giving us our freedom back.
Right. So it's the bottom line is mindfulness. Yeah.
Yeah. So just shifting the focus from the inner to the outer, that assists.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shaykh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lena, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Salam, Sheikh. Thank you so
Alaikum
much
salam.
for a beautiful talk. My question was regarding, the same topic that you have, but I just feel like sometimes when one is on their spiritual journey and they do feel like a connection is being made and the chatter is lower, at times when challenges come up, it may sometimes hit even more harder. Maybe it's because of a perception in one's head that, I thought things would be better or I wouldn't feel it as badly, but it can have a worse effect at times. So I was wondering if you had any sort of thoughts on that.
Yes, of course, we experience that. What happens is, you see, right now, if I can give a crude analogy, the body is unwell, but it's become accustomed to and it's adapted to not being well. So we don't realize how unwell we are. Let's say someone who has constant headaches and migraines. Now, when that person finds relief from headache and migraine, and they start forgetting what a headache feels like and a migraine feels like, and suddenly after a month they get a migraine, it will hurt far more than it used to previously. And that is a part of this ongoing journey of growth, because we were in a very unwell state. Our bodies became desensitized to our ill health. But when our bodies become fine-tuned and healthy, when that state comes back, we really feel it for what it is. Now, that's not meant to deter us. That is meant to allow us to acknowledge that how things really are, and then to move on again. You see, our journey is progressive ones with slight dips. It's not like this. That's not how it is. It's actually always on the ascending curve with slight dips, and then we ascend again. It's like that. When you look back on your life with persistence in mindfulness, in prayers, in spiritual connection with God, when you look back, you will see a huge difference. And in fact, if we start journaling our lives and saying, oh, this thing has really bothered me today, I've spent this much time thinking over it, it's affected me in this way, just keep on journaling and look back at it after a year, and you will see, oh, those things that used to really concern me have now actually become minor events of life.
Thank you, Sheikh. That was super helpful. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Sheikh. Sheikh, I have two questions. I think they're both related, so I'm going to read both of them. The first one is, since after Ramadan, again, my tahajjud is lost, please advise. And the second is, if we are trying to wake up for the Salat al-Layl, even if we are super sleepy, do we train ourselves to do so to build our spiritual muscle, just like we push ourselves to work out at the gym? Does that work for spirituality, to fake it while we make it? Or does the feeling come from within?
So the feeling is not always, I'm replying both of them together, yes? The feeling doesn't always come from within. God's grace is contingent upon the receptivity of the heart and the soul. The receptivity of the heart and the soul has to be there before you can feel the grace of God. So, given the fact that the heart is not always receptive, the danger is that if you stop praying and not train yourself to pray, then that receptivity will be further diminished. So given this, it is better to discipline ourselves to get up and to offer those prayers, but to always be mindful of the experience of the prayer. So if it becomes arduous and burdensome, then try something else. Say, okay, I'm going to do this prayer, but do it a bit more quicker, but with a lengthy sajda. I will not read all those du'as. I will do a simple prayer and see what sits more comfortably within the soul. But don't give it up, because the heart needs to always be kept at that position where it can reconnect with God. But try out different methods that work best for you in a calm sort of methods, and that are most comfortable for your own system. And everybody has a very different sort of a way in which they feel inner peace and connectedness with God. Now, after Ramadan, it's natural that the tahajjud goes out of the window and everything else goes out of the window. It's quite natural, it's normal, and we are humans. But we must realize that we need to keep it up. We need to keep the practice going. So if we feel that maybe we can't wake up, then in that case, sleep a bit early, or pray the tahajjud before going to bed. But pray it in a way that it is not ceremonial. It's something that I have to get out of the way. It's a tick box exercise. No, pray it because you want to pray it in a state of calm, pray it with minimal sort of prayers, but pray it, do a bit of a lengthier sajda, so you actually feel the beauty of that prayer, and keep on innovating, try different things so that it feels productive and meaningful for you. Once you get that, carry on with that, and the rest should evolve naturally.
Thank you, Shaykh. There's a follow-up thing saying praying with a little voice has helped me to concentrate more, and I just wanted to share that.
So pray with the whisper or voice. In fact, it helps a lot. If you can hear yourself pray, then the focus on the sound will take the mind away from other things.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? You can use the raise hands function, or otherwise, inshallah, we will meet in 2 weeks. Thank you, Shaykh, for that really wonderful talk. We won't be doing the trip today, and inshallah, we'll do it in 2 weeks. Take care.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.